Would it be nice? Ah!
Fun.
An outdoorsman from the YouTube channel Grizzly Gaz runs a channel focused on camping, bushcraft, and testing outdoor gear in the UK wilderness. He's not a paranormal investigator, just someone who loves spending time in nature with his dog Fendi. On this particular trip, he headed to the woods for a quick camp at his semi-permanent setup where he has permission to stay. He arrived, set up his tent, and spent the evening testing out some new gear and cooking dinner by the fire. Earlier in the day, he'd noticed some kids running around in the woods, messing about. But by nightfall, the woods had gone quiet. Later that night, Gaz decided to go for a walk through the dark woods with Fendi to see if those kids were still around. The forest was pitch black, the kind of darkness where your flashlight only cuts through a small circle of visibility. Everything outside that beam is just shadow. He moved slowly through the trees, scanning the area. Then he heard something, a sound that stopped him cold.
Gonna see if there's I had some kids earlier just running about, messing about. So if I find them, I'm gonna put me little blue lights on.
Childlike giggling, baby laughter, faint but unmistakable, coming from somewhere in the darkness ahead. Gaz froze, listening intently. The woods were completely silent, except for that sound. He waited, his flashlight sweeping the trees. Then he heard it again.
Come on, mate.
The same sound, giggling, echoing through the empty forest. But there was no one there, no movement, no sign of the kids he'd seen earlier. Just the sound of laughter, hanging in the air. Gaz didn't stick around to find out where it was coming from. He headed back to camp with Fendi and settled in for the night. The next morning, he packed up and left. He never found an explanation for the laughter he heard in the woods that night. Glenn from the YouTube channel Black Crag is a landscape photographer and hiker who documents his adventures across the Lake District. His content focuses on outdoor photography, fell walking, and capturing the beauty of the mountains, not investigating the paranormal. But on this particular trip, Glenn decided to camp on Souter Fell on Midsummer's Eve, a hill with a dark legend dating back to 1735. According to historical records, 26 sober and respected witnesses saw a massive spectral army marching across the ridge of Souter Fell on Midsummer's Eve in 1745. The procession went on all night, soldiers, horses, carriages appearing at one end and vanishing at the other. The next morning, locals climbed the hill and found no trace, no footprints, no hoof marks, nothing. Glenn wanted to see if the legend was real. Glenn set up his tent on the ridge with his dog Finn and spent the evening relaxing, watching the sunset. He had a cheap infrared camera with him, a modified GoPro knockoff that could film in the dark without needing a flashlight. The night was calm, peaceful. He walked around the summit, checking the area, making sure no one else was around. Earlier, he'd seen someone flying a kite, but they had left. As Glenn walked back toward his tent in the darkness, he suddenly froze.
Very light, soon. Oh, not long at all. What the Oh, what the hell? There's a bloke stood next to my tent. What the
There was someone standing right next to his tent, a tall, dark figure. For a split second, the camera captured it. A tall, shadowy silhouette standing motionless beside the tent. Dark, humanoid, watching. Then the footage abruptly cuts to the next scene. When the recording picks back up, Glenn is already at his tent, frantically searching the area. But there's no one there. No movement, no footprints, nothing. Whatever he saw or thought he saw is gone. Glenn was rattled. He got into his tent trying to convince himself it was his imagination. Maybe he'd seen something in the background, a trick of the light. But the image was burned into his mind, that tall figure standing right there. He spent the rest of the night barely sleeping, every sound making him tense. The next morning, Glenn packed up and left, still shaken but unsure of what had actually happened. In a follow-up video, Glenn returned to Souter Fell and explained what happened that night. He walked viewers through the exact spot where his tent had been, where he saw the figure standing. That's when he revealed what he discovered when he got home and reviewed the footage.
And how did I have it? So I was talking like this, blah, 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 and I'm absolutely certain there was someone stood right by the tent, and that's why I was like, what the hell? So what I did is I got the camera and I spun it round like this and started to face forward and walk towards the tent. I was kind of coming down here. It certainly wasn't boggy. It was nice and dry that night. And as I got to the tent, there was no one there. So I was still filming this whole time. Got here, like, right, okay, someone's messing about here. They're either hiding behind the tent or they've jumped into this long grass here. So I came over here, started looking in the grass. I think I might have even got my torch out at this point and shining it around. Nothing, nobody, absolutely nothing there at all. And no one around, just no one anywhere. So I just sort of tried to forget about it. And the morning came, yeah, he's still alive, that's good. Nothing happened. And it wasn't until I got home that I played the footage back. And if you've seen the video, you'll see that it cuts out. It cuts out as I turn the camera around and start walking that direction. I was still filming then. I was still going towards that grass and looking and everything. And I didn't know until I got home that actually that footage, because you can't play it on the back on the, you can't play it back on the camera, it's rubbish. I didn't find out until I got home that the camera, for some reason, just stopped recording as soon as I turned around.
The camera had stopped recording. Right after capturing that brief glimpse of the figure, the recording just cut out. Glenn was certain he was still filming as he walked toward the tent, as he searched the grass, as he looked for whoever or whatever was there. But the camera had turned itself off. He admitted he couldn't explain it. He saw something, and whatever was standing by his tent remains a mystery. Xander Budnick runs a popular camping and outdoor survival channel documenting his solo adventures in the Canadian wilderness. His content focuses on bushcraft, cooking over fire, and testing gear in extreme conditions. On this trip, Xander headed out during early spring, that awkward time between winter and summer, when the snow is melting and bears are coming out of hibernation. He set up camp near a partially frozen lake, cooked some pizza pockets over the fire, and hung his food in a tree to avoid attracting bears. As night fell, Xander settled into his shelter. The forecast had called for rain and thunderstorms, and he could see lightning flashing in the distance, but the storm stayed far away. Everything at his camp was quiet, peaceful. Then, later that night, he heard something, a strange noise coming from down by the water. It sounded like crying, whining, something splashing around in the shallows. Xander listened, trying to identify what it was, but it was too dark to see. The sounds continued, close, unsettling, echoing across the still night air. The crying, the splashing, the movement, it was right there, just down by the water's edge. He assumed it might be a baby moose, but he couldn't be sure. The sounds were freaky, creepy, and they didn't stop for a while. Xander stayed in his shelter, listening to the strange noises echoing across the frozen lake. The next morning, Xander walked down to the area where he'd heard the sounds. What he found was strange. The ice on the lake had been freshly cracked, broken open in a way it hadn't been the day before. Something had been there. Something had been moving around in that exact spot during the night. To this day, Xander doesn't know for sure what made those sounds by the water. Just the crying, the splashing, and the cracked ice left behind in the morning. A camper from the YouTube channel Novice Wild Camper headed to the Peak District for his last camp of 2021. He set up his tent at White Edge in the Big Moor area, hoping for clear skies and some good night photography. The evening was calm, the temperature mild. He cooked his usual soba noodles, had some coffee, and settled in for the night. Everything seemed normal. Later that night, something woke him up. A sound, strange, unfamiliar. He grabbed his camera and started recording.
Right, so I've heard deer, I've heard foxes make some really weird noises at night. But I don't know if you heard that. Not sure if the camera picked it up, but God knows what it is. It's quite a weird guttural sound.
A weird guttural sound coming from somewhere outside his tent. Deep, unsettling. He listened carefully, trying to identify it. Then it happened again.
Did you hear that? That's quite eerie. It does not sound like a deer. Definitely doesn't sound like a fox.
This time it sounded different, like something breathing, heavy, deliberate breaths in the darkness just outside. He froze, listening. The sound lingered in the still night air, then faded. He zipped up his tent, put in his earplugs, and tried to get some sleep. The rest of the night was quiet. When morning came, he packed up and left. He never figured out what made those sounds in the Peak District that night. A solo camper from the YouTube channel Brothers Wild decided to go camping during Storm Debbie, a massive storm bringing 80 miles per hour winds to North Wales. His original plan was to camp on a mountain, but with an orange weather warning in effect, he chose somewhere local instead, a woodland area he'd been to before. It was his first solo camp, and he picked the worst possible night for it. He set up his tent in a secluded spot, elevated away from the river. The wind was picking up, but he managed to get a fire going, cooked dinner, and settled in for the night. Around 10 p.m., he crawled into his tent and got ready for sleep. The storm wasn't as bad as expected. Everything seemed fine. Then, late that night, he heard a loud bang.
I just heard like a loud bang. It's either an explosion or it sounded like a gunshot. It was really, really loud.
It sounded like an explosion or a gunshot, something massive echoing through the woods. It unnerved him, but he stayed in his tent. A short time later, while on the phone with his brother, something happened that changed everything. A strange sound.
He's in Chicago, obviously, so it would have been nice.
Right outside his tent. Close. Too close. Whatever it was right there, just on the other side of the fabric. Pure panic took over. He grabbed his camera and ran out of the tent, fleeing through the dark woods. He eventually reached the flooded river and had to wade through the freezing water to escape. He never went back to find out what was outside his tent that night. Welcome to the Woods UK is a YouTube channel focused on bushcraft, wild camping, and outdoor survival skills in the UK woodland. The creator frequently camps in a particular woodland area where he has permission to explore and set up semi-permanent camps. But over time, strange things started happening. Evidence of trespassers, unexplained sounds, and signs that someone else was in the woods. He set up trail cameras to investigate. On this trip, he returned to check his cameras after a storm and found something disturbing.
It is very strange and it's quite big. So it's definitely a man or someone that wears a very, very big shoe. I'll just spin you around to show you it. Look at that. That's massive. My BK2 next to it. It's just slightly larger than my BK2. Oh, I want to trip myself out. That looks like a toe as well. My God.
Large barefoot prints in the mud, far bigger than his own. Tracks that didn't match his boots. He was shaken. This was the first concrete evidence that someone had been in the woods. He decided to move his live CCTV camera to this area, one that sends footage directly to his phone no matter where he is. A few weeks later, he camped in a different part of the woodland. He set up for the night, cooked dinner, and settled in. Then, late that night, he heard something.
I don't know if you'll be able to hear, but Fuck's sakes.
Screams. Someone or something screaming outside his tent. It sounded like someone in pain. The screams echoed through the dark woods. He stayed in his tent, rattled but determined to wait until morning. Daylight was only an hour and a half away. As soon as the sun rose, he packed up and did a full sweep of the woodland, concerned someone might be injured or lost, but he found nothing, no one. One night, while sitting in bed at home, he got a notification from his CCTV camera. He checked his phone and saw something strange.
There was an odd little light that came on the camera one night when I was sitting in bed. I had a notification, it pinged on, and then all there was this funny little orb looking thing up to the middle left hand side. I eventually writ this off as some sort of bug that had come down.
A light moving through the woods. It wasn't moving like a flashlight or headlamp. It was moving strangely, erratically through the darkness. He couldn't explain it. 3 days later, the same camera captured something else, this time in broad daylight.
So let's fast forward 3 days post camp that you've just seen. Early Thursday morning at 4:12 AM, this figure comes into view. Almost looks like it's trying to pull something down from a branch above, acting in a peculiar manner. Then the camera takes a further 2 still shots of it moving further off to the left-hand side of the woodland.
At 4:12 a.m., a tall black figure appeared on the footage, moving through the exact same area where the light had been. The figure was acting strangely, reaching up toward the branches, pulling at something. The camera captured multiple shots as it moved deeper into the woods. To this day, he doesn't know if it's a trespasser, a poacher, or something he can't explain. The mystery remains unsolved,